I'd like to give a quick disclaimer pertaining to this episode. So, as most of you know, that not all the views and opinions shared on Through the Trauma podcast align perfectly with my views and opinions, and that's okay. As people, we are able to have differences in views and opinions and belief systems, and that's okay. And my goal is to share with you the different healing modalities, different things that could help you through the trauma. So, I would like for you to take a listen to this episode. It's an amazing episode. My guest drops so much knowledge, but I also want you to know that just because he shares certain views and opinions and belief systems doesn't necessarily mean that aligns with my views and belief systems. However, I do hope that you take massive value from this, and I hope that you find the help that you need through the trauma. Welcome to Through the Trauma podcast. My name is Amber Larkins. Published photographer, storytelling expert, visual artist, entrepreneur, speaker, and coach. This podcast was born from one question: how do I get inspiring stories of triumph out to the people who need to hear them the most? Come with me, enter my world, where lives are getting changed, heroes are getting developed, and greatness is being achieved. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Through the Trauma podcast. I am Amber Larkins, your host, and today I have with me Mr. Dean Graves. He is a meditation teacher, a mental health counselor, and a spiritual guide. He has over 20 years experience, and his expertise is in mental health and deep spiritual understanding. He is going to give us a good understanding of what trauma actually is. We talked about this just a little bit before we jumped on the call. I'm excited to hear a lot more about you, Dean, and just your expertise and how you can really help us understand trauma and what it is that you do to really help people overcome trauma. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Amber. I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you and with to your audience.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate it a lot as well. And trauma is one of these buzzwords that we hear used a lot, and it's one of those things where I do think there's probably a lack of understanding of what that actually is. So tell me a little bit about trauma. What's your perspective of trauma?
Trauma is a distinctly different experience than what we would normally call a stressful experience. Because of how the individual interprets the experience. And to understand that, I need to kind of go backwards a little bit and do a little background of how we develop as humans and why traumas become part of our experience.
Okay.
We exist within a range of consciousness. We are consciousness, and everything that we experience is consciousness. But we function within a specific range of experience, and this is, relatively speaking, a very elementary range. And our task to move through this range, increase our enlightenment, is to become aware. Awareness is what we are learning about. The healing process for everyone, whether they're healing from traumas or just life itself, is to first reach a point of awakening. And awakening is nothing more than that point in a person's life where they come to the realization that all that I have been doing up to this time is not significantly providing me with happiness. And that's all an awakening is. But it is incumbent upon the individual that reaches that point of awareness to begin to explore other alternatives to what they have been doing. And during that process, ideally, they will become aware, and eventually our task to graduate to the next range of consciousness is to actually become awareness. So awareness is actually the discovery tool of what needs to be healed within us. And it is the healing tool itself, because once you discover what the problem is, you're not just going to let it lay there and not do anything about it. You're going to let it go. Um, in order to experience this range of consciousness, we are designed to create from the moment that we are born, when we process that first thought as an infant, we create a hierophant or a false identity or an ego. It's all the same thing, just different names for the same thing. The purpose of forming this identity is to get more of what we like. And we create this identity perpetually over the course of our lifetime by adding and subtracting beliefs primarily about us or what we need to do in order to get more of what we like. We go through our childhood years getting most of these beliefs from parents and siblings and friends in the neighborhood, a relatively small world. And then we go through puberty and we enter those teenage years that are usually so delightful for everyone. And what has happened there is the potential of the child transforming into the teenage years is marked by an escalation in awareness, but there's no insufficient information to go with that awareness. And so the teenage years for everybody is difficult because we have all this new awareness, but we don't have information yet to fill in the gaps. But this is all still part of that hierophant, of that false identity. We're narrowing down what it is that we like through the course of our experiences. We go through this period of life where we're wheeling and dealing in business or family or whatever it is that's occupying our time, still reinforcing these beliefs that we've incorporated in our identity. Based on the experiences that we have had, we have created an image of who we think we are. That is our hierophant. It is our false perception of self. And we sincerely believe that this is who I am. And so when we have experiences that are unpleasant, that we don't like, our beliefs that we've incorporated into our identity are being challenged. They're not getting us more of what we like. That in and of itself is stress. That's what stress is. And that stressful experience results in all of the things that science has defined as stress, physical manifestations, and mental health issues, and so forth. Almost all mental health issues are predicated upon, number one, this false image of the self, and then the challenging of that false image of self that threatens our perspective of self. We create expectations based upon our experiences. If I've had an experience and I had this result, well, I expect that same result every time. And so we keep those beliefs. If I dress a certain way, if I behave a certain way, if I interact with certain types of people, if I join certain clubs, yada, 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 all of those things, we perpetually modify over the course of our life in order to narrow down that ability to get more of what we like with every experience that we have. In order to make this identity work, we create what are called peer supports. And just like the peers that hold the dock up or the peers that hold your house up, they hold this false perception of self in place. And these are comprised of our friends, of our family that we associate with, the groups that we join, our spouse, our children. All of those become peer supports for our identity, and we choose them because we feel most comfortable with these people in our presence. I can surrender, if not surrender my false identity, I resonate with their false identity. And so I feel less stressed when I'm in their presence. every time that we have an experience, we perceive that experience to last some 15 minutes, 30 minutes, some period of time. But the reality is that that perceived experience is comprised of dozens of thoughts. Every one of those individual thoughts that go into this perceived experience is a complete experience. And it is a complete experience because we are obligated to make a decision about that individual thought before we can go on to the next thought. And that decision, very simply, is either this thought feels good and I like it and I want more of it, or it doesn't feel good and I don't like it and I don't want any more. That is a complete emotion. That's all there is to an emotion. All of the names that we've given to other emotions are actually conditions of being that we are in at the time that we process that thought. So if we're feeling sad, if we're feeling grief, if we're feeling joyful, all of those are conditions that we have entered into at that moment in time that we're processing that thought. If we have an experience that doesn't give us more of what we like, we experience stress and we feel our identity being challenged. So we have a choice. Either we can modify that belief that's being challenged within our identity and throw it out and probably accept another one, thereby learning the lesson that that experience brought us. If we don't, then we may get angry or some other reaction. Anger is nothing more than our attempt to make the experience go away so we don't have to become aware of what it is within us we have to change. Now, men have a unique behavior that if you disrespect me, you're disrespecting my false identity, my beliefs in there, and I'm going to beat the hell out of you until you see how wonderful my identity is instead of changing my identity. And therefore, the bellicosity emerges from the um, false perception of self and the need to defend and protect that rather than learning the lesson that was brought to you in the experience. Those are just stressful experiences. Everybody has those every day, and they are messages to us about us of things that we need to become aware of and surrender or change. Now, how a trauma differs from those experiences is in the course of processing these individual thoughts that comprise a perceived experience. Some of a few of those individual thoughts will challenge the authenticity of our false perception of self, this hierophant that we've created, so much that we, for that thought, enter into a condition of shock. And just like a person, for example, someone who survives a tornado, and their home is destroyed and their family is scattered, and they walk around for hours, if not days, days in a daze, and they're just unable to associate because their awareness was so traumatized that their awareness left the body. And in order to get over that, to heal that, they have to bring, usually with help, bring that awareness back into their body and begin to feel their body again. Once they do that, then they can begin to function normally with additional healing. The same thing essentially happens when we experience a traumatic experience that 1, 2, 3, or 4 of the individual thoughts that we perceive comprises this total experience are so threatening to our safety, our security, our well-being, however we interpret it, that we can't make that decision of either it feels good or it doesn't feel good. And so our awareness for that thought is unable to adjudicate that thought as something we like or don't like. We can't assign an emotional value to it. And so our perception is that that entire perceived experience is unpleasant and traumatic for us because we have a gap in our experience that is just a void that we couldn't deal with at the time. When I work with folks that have traumas, and we all have traumas, the process is nothing more than asking that person to find the experiences that were I don't say traumatic, just stressful for them, and they invariably will go at least to one of those experiences. They know what the experiences are and where the problems are. And you simply ask, I mean, what experience first comes to mind? And your body's energy system will show you that experience immediately. That this is the one you want to work on because it's the one that needs to be healed first. And you scan through that experience, you find those moments of your peak emotional value within that experience. And then it is a process through several processes that I have learned to focus the patient's attention on that moment, on that thought. They're in a different situation than they were when they originally experienced it and have much more capacity to focus their awareness. When they do that, the hindrance goes away, the blockage goes away, and they are immediately healed. I've never had anybody with more than 4 thoughts in an experience. Usually it's only 1 or 2. But I've never had anybody with more than 4 moments, peak moments of their emotion. And oftentimes, what their protective system will do, I have them rate the intensity of the moment on a scale of 0 to 10, and 10 being the strongest. And they'll often go to a moment within that experience that they'll say, oh, it's a 7. Okay. So we clear the 7, and then they have them scan through it again to find the next moment. And so this one's a 10. And then we do the same thing with the 10. And if that doesn't clear the whole experience, there may be another one with a 5 or something like that. But we clear that whole experience. And once they clear that whole experience, the traumatic effects are gone. Now, the work that I do with therapists, and 60% of my patient load are therapists themselves. And so I take umbrage that, they're seeing a benefit to this on their own. But oftentimes the therapist will refer a new patient to me that they, for one reason or another, really haven't made progress with. And when I clear the traumas that they have to work with and then send them back to the therapist, because I don't work with patients more than 2, maybe 3 times. If I haven't done what I need to do in 3 times, then I'm not being effective. And before they send them to me, they almost always say, well, I can't get them to talk. I can't get them to open up. When I send them back to the therapist, they tell me, well, I can't shut them up. I can't stop them from talking about the experiences because the emotion's gone and they want to put the pieces of the puzzle together, to fit into their psyche. So a trauma is a very distinctly different experience than just a stressful experience. In all the stuff that psychology and the medical field has studied about changes to the brain, changes to the body, changes to behavior, those all happen, but those are not the trauma. The trauma is just that interpretation or that lack of interpretation of our thoughts, which hinder and disrupt our whole perspective of self and perspective of being. And when you heal those, all those other physical conditions heal. Your brain and your body is a manifestation of your mind. So it is the condition that it is in because your mind told it to be a certain way. When you change the mind, which is where the trauma experience actually exists, then it tells the brain to be different. And the brain heals automatically because it has better instructions from the mind.
So it sounds like this could be with anything, any self-limiting belief or anything. Is it the same process in the brain?
Well, the healing, yes, the healing of the brain. The brain is very plastic. Every time we process a thought, it minutely changes. And they've documented this. They see it changes all the time. It just rewires and rewires and rewires and rewires. It is a product of the mind. So when the mind is able to liberate itself from these false beliefs about our perception of self, then it automatically tells the brain to rewire. And if you understand, most of the psychiatry prescribes drugs that are designed to change the brain, change the wiring of the brain. And 90% of the medications that they have numb the awareness of the brain. Mm-hmm. And that's the healing tool that we need. So the drugs can be very helpful in helping you find an equilibrium to begin to heal from. But in and of themselves, none of them are designed to actually heal. They just help you to find a state of equilibrium that you can begin to function again within the world around us.
So the brain is intriguing to me. I've done a little bit of studying as I've tried to break my own kind of self-limiting beliefs and traumas and things like that. And the brain is really, it's an amazing tool. I feel like a lot of people don't know how to effectively use the brain. So is this something that is teachable, or is this something that people really need the help of like a guide or a therapist or someone that can kind of walk them through shifting these areas of the brain?
Well, it's not so much the brain that you can change, it's the mind that you can change. Okay. If you think of, and if you're driving your car and the front tires on your car perpetually wear out in the same pattern. Mm-hmm. You can keep changing the tires on the car and keep using the car, or you can fix the problem, which invariably is going to be the alignment. Until you fix the alignment, the tires are just going to keep wearing out in the same pattern. Right. The same is true until you relieve the mind of these false beliefs that you have incorporated in the mind. The brain is going to stay the same. Mm-hmm. One of the benefits of therapy in conjunction with hallucinogenics, they're finding, is the hallucinogenics for a brief period of time while you're under the influence of the hallucinogenics takes the borders or the bumpers off of the bowling alley, so that you're no longer restricted to going down that one lane. And that's, once the brain is wired, then it does that. It says, okay, I've been wired this way. This is the way you want it to be. And you may change a thought within the mind, but I'm still this way until you tell me specifically to change. And so the hallucinogenic allows people to experience what it would be like if the brain wasn't hardwired to be a certain way. And so it gives them liberty to change the beliefs in their mind, which over a period of time, not a great length of time, but over a period of time, rewires the brain so it no longer has those same restrictions that it was previously told by the mind to have.
So for someone that's kind of a newbie at this, how could you tell someone, like, say there's people listening that are like myself, how do you even start to begin to shift or heal? Where do we start?
Okay. Well, understand whether we are aware of it or not, we are all in the process of consciousness evolution. Our consciousness is evolving, which has nothing to do with our physicality. That is synonymous with enlightenment. Most people perceive enlightenment to be a destination, primarily because the accomplishments of the Buddha. That's pretty much the standard. But it is not a destination, it is the path that we are on, which is the path of consciousness evolution. Now, the experiences that we all share at this range of consciousness is we begin not this lifetime, but way many lifetimes ago, we began in a condition that is described as primordial darkness, which simply means we don't know anything. And we incarnate repeatedly. The average human has incarnated over 3,000 times, and many as 8,000 times. And we continue to coexist in both the metaphysical world and the physical world. The metaphysical world is our enduring self, and we are a consciousness pattern there that is an accumulation of all that we have learned from the multitude of incarnations that we have experienced. We begin each new incarnation and the condition that our consciousness pattern is in at the time that we incarnate. And so we don't begin from scratch. We begin on where we have evolved to in our consciousness pattern. And if you think the nature of our experience as an incarnate, imagine that we're on a sports team, and whatever sport that you would like, because they're all virtually the same in how they function. We practice all week long. We watch game films, we get coaching, we do whatever exercises that we need to do, learn plays, and then we have a game on Friday night. In the game on Friday night, we're supposed to do all the stuff that we practiced to do better than we did in the last game. Right now, we're in the game. This is the opportunity to propel ourselves forward along this evolutionary path based upon how we accomplish our task. And we began this conversation with me explaining that at this range of consciousness, awareness is what we are tasked with learning, of exploring. And that is, the progression is hierarchical only because you have to build the foundation before you build the floor. You have to build the floor before you build the walls. You have to build the walls before you build the roof of a house. And so we're building the foundation for future evolution progression. And awareness is the necessary foundation in order to be able to do that. So how someone begins, one of the tasks that we have is we are designed to create this hierophant that we've been talking about. We are given the opportunity to have experiences. Every experience is a message to us about something about us that we need to become aware of and learn. It's a message, it's a homework assignment. And when we don't do your homework, that doesn't mean the homework is no longer due. It just means we didn't do it. We hung out on the street corner or watched TV or something other than doing our homework. So we still have these homework assignments, and we get to keep these homework assignments in the form of the emotion that we experience, particularly the negative emotions that we experience. And that constitutes what's called emotional baggage. And we carry that. That's heavy. We have to carry with that with us everywhere we go until we learn the lessons that were brought to us in our experiences. Once we learn that lesson, then we can put that portion of the emotional baggage down and never have to deal with it again. But this accumulates over time. And if you imagine that before you were born, someone told you that your mission in life is to run down to the end of the street, and we're going to give you a new pair of running shoes and a nice running outfit, and that's all you have to do to have a successful life. And then you're born and you start running, and then somebody comes up to you and hands you a 300-pound ball of concrete and says your mission is the same. You still have to get down to the end of the street, but you have to carry this ball of concrete with you. And you're thinking, whoa, all the energy that I thought that I had to run is now being diverted to carrying this 300-pound ball of concrete. And so we have to get rid of the ball of concrete. And it is absolutely permissible to put the whole thing down at once and then continue to run The problem with that is in this 300-pound ball of concrete of all the lessons that were brought to us in our life that we were supposed to learn that we haven't learned. So to put the whole ball of concrete down at once, we have to learn all these lessons at once. So it's more practical to take chunks out of the ball of concrete as we progress. Each time we do, the ball of concrete gets lighter. Mm. And so until eventually the ball of concrete is gone and we're zipping down to the end of the street like we originally thought we were going to do at the beginning of the life. So healing process and the enlightenment process are exactly the same. We have to heal the emotional baggage that we have collected, and we do this by inverting awareness. The same awareness that we're using to function in the world, we learn to invert that, become aware of what we have incorporated into our perception of self that is distorting us. And as we do that, it's simultaneous, it's not sequential. We have to become aware of these beliefs that we've incorporated into our false identity. And as we surrender those, then we experience significantly less stress. Now, understand that our objective is to become blissful, to be bliss. Bliss is nothing more than the absence of stress. And so the more progress we make in becoming aware, healing the emotional baggage, and surrendering these false perceptions of self that perpetually cause us to experience stress, the happier we get, because happiness fills the void that was left by the thoughts that have now been vacated. It's automatic. The experiences for everyone are immutable. In other words, once you achieve a certain level of awareness, of healing, then you will experience a commensurate level of happiness.
Okay, I agree with the majority of the things that you're saying here.
But there are points you don't.
There's one thing that I don't, and I'm totally open to having any discussion with any person. I don't believe in reincarnation because I'm a Bible believing Christian. I do believe that our soul is like carried with us, so it's one time. Now I know there's a lot of disagreement about that, but that is how I see things. Now everything else that you said, though, I'm like right on board with you. I've often said this too, even on this podcast, about having an awareness is key. Like I have to know that something's wrong. I can't heal something if I don't know something's wrong with me. So becoming aware, and I believe this is in alignment with what you're saying. Like I have to become aware that I have issues with whatever type of thing. Like I know that I have certain types of traumas. I know that I have certain triggers that are affected by those types of traumas. So when someone says something to me, I can have a reactionary response where I'm like, well, you shouldn't have, like I get angry and defensive. Or I can have a more like, hold on, that triggered me. Why is that triggering me? Is this something inside of me? Was this person meaning to be this way or whatever? Is this something inside of me? And 9 times out of 10, there's something, when I ask myself these questions, I'm like, okay, there's something inside of me that is making me want to react in a certain way. I agree 100% with the awareness. I believe that's 100% true. What you're talking about healing and with the brain, I believe is powerful stuff, because our brains are so extremely powerful. Now, the part about really separating that mind and brain, that part I've obviously had a lot of questions about myself. Like at what part does that kind of like one part end and the other part begin? How much of a separation is there? How much of a like mesh or merge is there in there? So there's like, obviously I have some questions. I think when we start talking about metaphysical, which this is something that in my younger years, I just didn't really believe in at all. But the more that I understand energy and science And the more that I kind of dig into, like, okay, we're very dynamic beings as humans. I think we're very, like, there's so many intricate details of about us as humans. And it's intriguing. And I think when you start really tapping into that, it's like it brings up more questions. So you have more questions, um, which I think it's great. I've just had this thought this morning about why don't people ask more questions about things? Like, people go through the motions, and I'm shocked that people just like live their life and go through the motions and they never ask the hard questions. It's like they don't want to even think about them. But I'm like, why not? Life is a journey. And, I know you described it as like this reincarnation of beings, like you're reincarnated over and over and over. Whether you and we can dive into this a little more, but whether you believe that or not, it's like it's still an evolution of, like, if you believe how you believe or you believe how I believe that life is an evolution of life. Like, certain things are happening, we're evolving, we're constantly coming more to a realization of, and we're hopefully asking questions. So we're constantly gathering more information and processing that. So we're becoming new people almost on a we don't see it on a daily basis because you can't see growth, right? I have a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old. I can't see them grow, from today to yesterday or tomorrow. But I can, if I put their mark on a wall that shows how tall they are, and then in a year from now, we measure them again, I don't see that growth. I also, like, I work out. I don't see the growth happen from day to day if I go in and try to grow my muscles, but I can see it over a course of time. So it's, I think that hopefully, if people are growing, they are they are evolving more and more every day into what I would call what who they're destined to be, who their what their purpose is here. I think everybody has a purpose. I do think that you are served again and again and again this lesson until you get it. Like, there's certain things that it's not about the end goal, it's about who you're becoming on the journey to that end goal. And I see this in every area of my life, like in my own self discovery of myself and my own journey of becoming more developing as a human. Um, it's like, at what point do you stop pushing for the goal? Like, you always push for the goal, but at what point do you say, I don't, I'm not happy until I hit that goal, but you embrace the moment of the becoming in the process? Does that make sense?
It does, yes. And the age-old question: does the end justify the means? And the end does not justify the means. The means are what is important because the means are what are shaping you, and
Mm-hmm.
the destination is inconsequential. And to
Mm-hmm.
address your question of why people don't ask questions, as part of creating this hierophant, the hierophant is very changeable, very malleable until we reach a point of what is described as stasis in our life. We seek stability, but the difference between stability and stasis is stability anticipates change and so accommodates, different situations. When we reach that point of stasis in our lives, then instead of being willing to change ourselves, we try to manage and manipulate the world around us in order to conform to how we have created this hierophant. And so we become, at that point, unable, if not unwilling, to question and to ask the questions that you're addressing. Why this? Why that? Why do I keep having these types of experiences? And it's not so much that we are served with the experiences, uh, and this will contradict your stated beliefs, but prior to incarnation, but prior to birth, we choose a lifetime that will have a high probability of providing us with the types of experiences that we need in order to advance ourselves, to learn the curriculum that we still have to learn. And so when we reach that, if we reach that point of stability, or not stability, but of stasis, and essentially shut down, we refuse to try to be aware of what we need to change within us and try to, usually by force, manipulate the world around us, then that accelerates the stress that we experience, because we're not going to manipulate the world to change to meet our expectations. That's not the way it works. But because we are the way we are magnetic. We attract the type of people, the type of experiences that we need in that portion of our lives in order to become aware and to heal, to surrender those aspects of ourself that are perpetuating our stress and suffering. And suffering is, if you think of stress as you hit yourself in the head with a 2x4 one time, suffering is when you keep hitting yourself in the head with the same 2x4 over and over and over. Well, the cure to that is to stop hitting yourself in the head with a 2x4 and change what it is within you that is causing you to have that repeated experience.
How would one do that?
Well, with awareness. You become aware of the emotional
what's
baggage and heal
it?
the emotional baggage. You become aware of the beliefs that you're carrying that are perpetually causing you to attract the same sorts of experiences that you don't like.
So I guess the question that I have here is, so, and like if we give like an example here, you're in a relationship, okay? Say that you're in a relationship, you know it's a toxic relationship, but you can't get out of that relationship. So, and this is just an example, but this is like anything, any type of addiction, any type of thing that people would gravitate to, right? And they know they need to get out of that situation. So, if I'm hearing you correctly, what you're saying is that there's something in that person, there's a root cause that's making you gravitate to that toxic relationship or to that drug abuse or alcohol abuse or whatever thing. You're gravitating to that thing, and you have to find the link of what's causing, like the root problem of what's causing you to choose that. Am I hearing you correctly when I say that?
Yeah, every experience that we have, every thought that we process, every experience that we have is a subject object relationship. The object is always the teacher, the subject is always the learner, the student. And so, even in the course of an interaction, of our interaction right now, we are exchanging roles of subject and object. Particularly in a relationship, as you describe it, there is an overall subject object relationship. Usually, the female is the object and the male is the subject. And when you have a unhealthy relationship, you say you have a abusive relationship and the female is the one being abused, which is usually the case. Who is the subject and who is the object? I'm asking.
Yeah, I would say the subject being the female, or no, the subject being the male. Did I say it right?
The male is always the subject in that scenario. The female is always the object. The female is the teacher. The male is the subject, the student. What are we tasked with learning at this range of consciousness? Compassion, sympathy, understanding of another, surrendering our perception of an autonomous self and having consideration for others. That's all part of the function of awareness. And so when a female presents as a victim, they're providing the male with the opportunity to evolve by escalating their awareness and demonstrating sympathy and compassion. And I understand that that's a difficult situation, but that is the nature of our evolution, as to, by surrendering this hierophant, surrendering our false perception of self, becoming more of our authentic self, which allows us to evolve back to greater unity with the Creator.
So are you saying that in that situation, there's not things there for the female to learn as well?
There are, well, we alternate subject object relationships, even in the course of this interaction that we are having.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's constantly a changing scenario, but the overall role is the female is the object, the male is the subject. Now, we're going to disagree again.
That's okay. I think it's great to disagree.
The purpose of
learn.
multiple incarnations is to provide us with a lens to experience every possible relationship and position that is available in this range of consciousness. So we incarnate as male, we incarnate as female, we incarnate as rich, we incarnate as poor, we incarnate as an abuser, as a victim, whatever possible combination of experiences are available. We learn things by experiencing them. We can't read about them and really learn them. We can, get an idea of what it's like, but until we experience it, we don't know it. And so that's the function of a multitude of incarnations, is to be able to have that lens and experience that lens that is going to give us a deeper and greater understanding of what we are here to learn. What we are here to learn, there's nothing about the physical world that we learn that is preserved when we die. We don't need to be a doctor. We don't need to be a lawyer. We don't need to be a basket maker or a baker or whatever it is. Those are all aspects of our physical incarnation. What is preserved are the inherent characteristics of the Creator and what we have learned about that, which includes the 5 inherent characteristics are awareness, love, wisdom, unity, and stillness. So the only thing that is preserved after an incarnation is what we have experienced and learned about those aspects that are perpetual, and that is what is accumulated into our consciousness pattern.
So can I ask you a question specifically about God?
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain your thoughts or views about who is God? Is there a God?
Well, let me explain that with a question, and I'll ask you if your perception of God is a religious term, okay, and your perception of God, would God be infinite?
You're asking me.
Yeah, I'm asking you.
Yes.
Okay, so what is infinity?
From nothing to from everything to everything. It's
everything,
there's no end,
it?
Right? Yeah.
Isn't it everything?
Yeah, there's no beginning, no end.
Okay. The numerical value of infinity is 1. Any other number is finite. 2 is finite because it's not everything. 1 is everything. So if God is 1, then the concept of every religion on the face of the earth is that there is a God and that there is an acolyte, or a you, a me, a perception of separation from God. If that were possible, then your perception of God, it doesn't change God, but your perception of God would be a finite perception, that God is finite. So if the Creator is infinite, then the Creator is everything, which brings into the question, who then are you? You are the Creator experiencing yourself at this range of consciousness. Can't be anything else if the Creator is infinite. because the creator is everything. There can't be a creator or a God in you and the creator or the God still be infinite. So the only way that that could be is that we are all the creator experiencing ourselves at this range of consciousness, which leads to the next question. How could that possibly be? Why am I such an idiot that I don't know any of this? Okay. Creation began to satisfy the creator's desire to know itself by experiencing itself. If you're all that there is, then that's a tough task. But in the wisdom of the creator, in order to know something, just as we were talking before, that we have to experience something in order to know something. Same is true with the creator. So the creator created an analog projection of itself, which is the creator conceptually, but it perceives itself as separate from the creator, which created the creator as the object and the creator as the subject. This is made possible by the concept of free will. Free will, unsatisfyingly to the philosophers that have argued for centuries that we don't have the choice of turning right or turning left because we're predestined, or we do have the choice of turning right or turning left because we have free will. Those are all products of free will. Free will is the perception of separation. And so because we have that perception of separation, we have the choice to behave uniquely. And so the creator as the subject, the analog projection of the creator, behaved uniquely from the creator. The creator observed itself and thereby learned of itself. And the creator as the subject continued to create creation as we enjoy it. And we are way down the scale. We are heavily intoxicated with free will because we perceive ourselves extremely separated from the creator. But that gives us the opportunity to perform uniquely, and through that performance, we are fulfilling the purpose of creation. Our purpose is the same purpose. Our purpose is to explore ourselves and thereby learn of ourselves. That's not our mission. Our mission, we can be, whatever profession that we've chosen to be helpful or not helpful, successful or not successful. Those are just the opportunities for experience that will allow us the opportunity to explore ourselves.
Let me ask you this. What happens? Do you believe there's an end?
Everything is simultaneous. We just perceive it according to the limitations of our awareness. And so it begins with the creator, it ends with the creator.
If what you're saying is true, and we're constantly being recreated or kind of reincarnated, what is the ultimate end?
The ultimate end is reunification with the creator. If you understand that the creator has sent this intoxicated perception of itself as far away from itself as it could go, and allowing it to follow that path of evolutionary development, of enlightenment back to itself, all along the way having unique experiences at every possible layer of consciousness to fulfill that purpose of creation, of the creator exploring itself by experiencing itself. So we are a step along the way. We have a long way to go, haven't gone very far, but our task is to have experiences, and through those experiences become aware of ourselves and explore ourselves, thereby fulfilling the purpose of creation.
You've given me a lot to think about. I will say that.
Very tactfully said.
No, so I'll be honest with you. When I started this podcast, my heart is to help people heal from trauma. I'm
Hmm.
obviously I'm a Christian. This is not a Christian podcast. I tell people that because I'm here to, I truly feel like, to just help people and help people overcome. I've gone through my own set of trauma. I wish there was a resource like this when I was going through my things,
Hmm.
and there just wasn't. And so I just want to be that for other people. Now, with that,
I applaud your efforts, truly. I mean, working with people experiencing traumas as much as I do, I sincerely applaud your efforts. It's
yeah,
greatly needed.
well, thank you. And but with that being said, I never like to shy away from any. I mean, to me, I think this is what makes human nature beautiful, is that we can, how do you learn, how do you grow, how do you do anything if you can't have open conversations? Like, if I
Hmm.
only want, I do believe in surrounding myself with people that are like-minded. However, if I never venture out from, say, those 5 people in my inner circle, like, how do I learn, or how do I adopt new ideas? And
Right.
so I always want to approach everything and every conversation with an open mind, in the sense of, maybe there's something here I can learn. And I feel like we do live in a culture and in a society where a lot of times people are very much rigid, like, it's this way. If you don't agree with me, like, we can't have a conversation. And I get people feeling strong about certain things. I feel strong about certain things as well. But there's so many unknowns when it comes to religion, or when it comes to spirituality. To me, there's like, we're on this journey, we're trying to figure things out. There's a lot of things that are not answered. I mean, even as me being a Bible believing Christian, I read the Bible, and there's a lot of questions I have that I will take, to God. Or and sometimes I believe there's no happenstance either. I believe that everything, we cross paths with people for a reason. Like, I don't fully understand it, but I know that I can be grateful and have gratitude for every person that comes into my path, because there's something there I can take from that relationship. So, um, with that being said, like, I do appreciate I appreciate everything that you said. It is a different way of thinking for me. It's a different way of believing in these. I like to approach every conversation with this idea of, like, I'm not just going to shut things down, not believe it because somebody else tells me to believe it, but because I truly have thought. And I think that's the problem that we lack nowadays in our culture, is that people don't think. Um,
Well, critical thinking, obviously, there's a big void of critical thinking, but how we advance our thinking is how it feels. If it resonates with you, if it feels right, then for you at that point in your progression, that's right for you. Now that may change in 2 weeks, but if it feels right, it's not so much a reductive or deductive process of thinking about something, whether it's true or not true, is whether it feels right. And if
mhm,
it feels right, incorporate it, make it part of you until it doesn't, until you
mhm,
replace it with something that is more resonant.
mhm,
But you ask what the end is. All is one, and that is the law of one. And there's nothing other than the experience of the creator by the experience by the creator. And so the ultimate end is a reunification with the oneness of creation,
mhm. And I,
which is all perceptual on our part.
mhm,
That's the distortion.
yeah. And I agree with you on that sense. Maybe we see things a little bit different, but I do believe that the end is that as well. I could ask questions all day long. Especially
Okay.
because I love meeting people that are believe a little bit differently, because I would love to ask questions, not to just because I have an curious mind. I would love to talk with you for hours, but we don't have hours. So um no, but I appreciate you. And with all that, and with everything that you said here, and just your work in general, if you really had to, like, leave my audience with something, a takeaway, something that you really feel in your heart you want them to grasp from this whole episode, what would that be?
Healing from traumas is not only possible, but it is essential. And I'll throw my self promotion out there. I have a book that I've written for mental health professionals, but it is easy to understand. You have to have no background or no training in order to understand it. So it's ideal for the general public as well. It's called The Identity Model. It is available on Amazon now. It will describe in great detail the hierophant that we've been talking about, the behavioral manifestations that result from that. And I have 3 exercises in the back of the book, that 2 of which you can do yourself to heal these traumas. You don't have to have someone guide you to heal from the traumas. You can do it yourself. But 2 of the 3 you can do yourself. The third one you have to have a partner do it, but they don't have to be a therapist, because I have a script in there. If you follow the script, it'll get you to the same place. And so quick and immediate, and as deeply healed as you want to be, you can follow those programs, those exercises they are, and read the book to get an understanding of what it is that is causing you to behave the way that you behave, and to have the unpleasant experiences that you do.
That's awesome. And I'm going to have to get a copy of your book, because I would love to do that activity as well. We talk about a lot of different modalities and healing techniques and different things here. And, I think different things resonate with different people, but I want to be healed fully. I want to be completely grown up in my self-growth, if that makes sense.
Right.
So I think when you're hungry for that, you're like, hey, I'll try whatever, and maybe that resonates. So I appreciate you sharing all of your expertise today, and just being open and honest with us about everything that you're doing, because I think you're doing some amazing work. Thank you so much for spending your time here with us today. And I sure hope we can stay in touch, and I'll definitely put all of your information in the show notes as well, so people can grab your book and learn more about you in general. So do you have anything else you'd like to say before we close up?
The healing begins with assuming responsibility for your own awareness and healing. And until you assume that personal responsibility, you're going to be at the whim and the limited capabilities of others. But we have awareness, and awareness is both the discovery tool and the healing tool, and only we can apply it. And so, to all your listeners, you have what it takes in order to heal. You just have to do it.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I truly believe that we have inside of us what we need. We have to find it. We have to search and find it. So
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for listening to Through the Trauma podcast. If you have found value in this episode, or believe in the mission behind what we are doing, please subscribe so that you never miss any future episodes. Also, be sure to check out our transformation project at transformationthroughtraumaproject.com, where we help inspirational stories get heard on a larger scale through multiple platforms. If you know someone who can benefit from this episode, please share it with them. Until next time.